Hi guys, uh, after a long time I'm coming back because lack of time and everything. So I have just hold on all the sessions because of some of the time constraints and all. Yeah, so I'm back with a new session on the new concept. So here we discuss the concept called integration. Okay, so integration. Basically, what is integration? So the meaning of integration is combining. Okay, so you are going to combine different systems, okay, from your current system and fetch the data and use it in your application. So here in integration, so what is the purpose of going for integration is, so there might be a data, okay, so where you don't have in your system or in your application or in your server or in your database. Okay, so normally every application, okay, there are a lot of applications which are being developed across for different clients, right? So basically, when you are developing an application, so you will normally have your database, which has a lot of schemas and tables, where your application data and your system data, okay, it will be stored in your own database tables. So there will be some thousands of tables, depends on your data and all, right? So your data will be in your own database and or in your own tables. That is in normal scenario. But if you want to access that particular data, you can hit your own table. You can write your queries in normal Java or any other languages. You need to write your SQL queries and do it. And even in Pega, we have different configurations. We have to fetch the data and show it. So that's fine if when it is in your system. So let's say I have an application here. So this is my Pega application, which I am developing. Okay, so this is some Pega application I am developing for a client. Okay, so here in the Pega application, so the data will be in your own database. So you will have your own database and you will try to fetch the data from your own database and you will store it here. So this is your DB or whatever. Okay. So this is how you will fetch the data when it is in your application. But let's say this Pega application needs the data which is not inside of this Pega DB or inside of your application. Okay, so the application needs some data. So that data might be, so they want to access the professional information of a person. So that means they have to get data from LinkedIn, let's say, LinkedIn system. So they want to access the professional information of a person or any individual from different system who maintains the professional details and everything. So let's say it is a LinkedIn system or LinkedIn service. And at the same time, so this application also needs to fetch the data of a person from another system or UID system. UID is all about other unique identification system. So this is one separate system. And similarly, this application also needs to fetch the data from some other external source that may be any other third source. So basically, these are the third-party sources, right? These are not the sources of this particular Pega application or whatever, right? So these are the different systems. Okay. So let's say this LinkedIn is nothing but it's one application, as we know. This is one application, and UID is also an application because our data is already always stored in the UID application, unique identification, other related systems. And similarly, LinkedIn has its own application and platform. So that is also a different system. So let's say this is built on .NET and this is built on Java. Let's say. Okay. So this is built on .NET and this is built on Java. Now our application is in Pega, so it is built on Pega. So now if I want to access the data, I need the data here. So I need the professional data here. Once the person enters his email ID, so once he enters the email ID as an input, so this email ID has to go to the system, and based on that email ID, it has to fetch the professional information and show it here. So this is my requirement here, requirement 1. And the second requirement is fetch citizen details. So that citizen details might be the Aadhaar details or unique identification details like first name, last name and all. So here what I will do, I will give the input as a UID or Aadhaar number as an input. So I will fetch all the data like first name, last name, father name, date of birth and everything. So this is professional details. This is professional data and this is Aadhaar data. So these are the two screens. This is one screen. Let's say you want to see the information, and this information is not in your system, but it is in third-party systems where you need to fetch with. So in this scenario, we are going to use integration. So this part is nothing but integration part, because the data what we need is not in our application. It is in third-party application or third-party system. Similarly here also, this is in third party, different system. So it is not in our system. So in such scenarios where our data is not within our application, then in such scenarios, you are going to go with integration. So that connectivity that you are going to establish to develop the solution to get the data from other services or other systems is nothing but integration. Okay, so this process is called integration part, because why you are integrating is you want the data from the third party system or some other external system which doesn't have any relation with your current application, right? So this is your application, these are different applications where your application need to communicate with external applications to fetch the data or to post the data also sometimes. So that might be different. So here it's not only about fetching the data, but in some scenarios you might need to update your data into, or you might need to post your application data into third-party systems. That depends on the methods that we have basically. Okay, so this part is called integration. The purpose of integration is, this is a real-time example why we go with integration, because the data is not within our system. If it is within our system or in our tables, yes, we need not to do, we need not to integrate. We can just simply create some rules like data pages and report definitions, and yes, we can fetch the data within our system. But if it is a third-party system, we need to do the integration. So there are different ways to make the integration happen. So let's see those things also. But before that, so I need to convey one point. So basically this system or this application is nothing but the client application, you can see. This is nothing but a client. Okay. And this is nothing but the service. And this is also the service, because they are providing the data based on our input. So this is the service or an API, you can also call it. API is all about, so it's providing the service. Okay. So this is the client, and these are the services, different services they are going to provide, because they are providing the data. So we are requesting. So now when the client system sends a input, then it is called a request. So this is nothing but a request. And when the client system sends, okay, a connectivity call. This is called a request, and output get is nothing but a response. So there will be two things here. One is request and one is response. Request is all about when the client system sends an input is nothing but the request. Response is all about whatever the output or whatever the return values or return information that we are getting from the service system is nothing but the response. So here the request in our example here, the request will be normally the email ID. So what is the request here? I mean, input or input parameter is nothing but mail ID. So based on that mail ID, it will check. So if that mail ID is existed or if it is not existed, if it is existed, what are the elements that it has to return? So that will be taken care by the third party system because they are maintaining the data. And so that response is nothing but whatever the educational qualification or current company or previous company and years of experience. That's such kind of information that we are getting in the form of response. So here also the same. Other data you are going to give the request as a other number, okay, which is unique. So based on that other number, whatever it will check in the system, and so this logic, whatever the logic that checking, searching, and everything will be handled by the system service itself. We need not to bother about anything because we just want to consume the service. That's it. Okay, so it will take the input as a other number and it will return it as a response. The response could be something like the first name, last name, and date of birth and address details, and also all these things will be in the form of a response. So that's how we can actually consume the data from the external services. So this is called a request and the response. So now, so the client machine, when we want to consume other third-party services or we want some data from external services, so this external systems has to give the document. They have to give the format, like what are the format they are using. So there might be different formats like JSON, like HTML, like flat files, and also some different formats. Basically, the service systems may be using. We don't know what kind of data that they are actually providing. Okay, so so to understand that, we need to create the connectors and services accordingly. So basically, what is the main purpose of creating this rules? I mean, in Pega, we need to create some rules if you want to consume, let's say if you want to consume this other service in our application. So for that, what we need is we need to know the endpoint URL. Let's say so I'm giving this URL. So let's say this is some test URL. Okay, this is the URL of this particular system or service, whatever we are consuming. So this will be given by the service people itself. They have to give this URL. Then only we can build or develop the connector in Pega. So they have to give this endpoint URL. This is nothing but the endpoint URL. This is integration or integration system. We need to know the endpoint URL. We need to know the input parameters. Okay, we need to know the input parameters. Example in our parameters, something like other number. Okay, and also we need to know the response, what we are going to get. So the response might be even XML, that might be in XML or JSON format, or it might be in HTML, etc. So there are different formats the services basically maintain. So these are the things that we need to know before building a connector or whatever. If you are a client, we are building a connector. If you are service, if you are building a service, then we need to create a service rules. Okay, so now in our scenario, basically, so we want to access the system from this particular thing. So for that, what we need to do is we need to create the connector rules. So connector is all about a client. So in connectors, we have different connector rules. So what are the different connector rules we have? Is we have connect Java, connect REST, connect SOAP, connect JMS, etc. Connect SQL also we have. So like this, we have different connect rules. These are different connector rules. What are these connector rules? Or nothing but these are given in Pega. Okay. So to access a Java service, then we need to build a, like, let's say this is a Java application, right? So if you want to consume any Java based system, if you want to consume any data from Java based system, yes, you can build connect Java. REST is all about representational state transfer. So this is used for XML and JSON both. Okay. And so simple object access protocol. So this is only used for XML. So if you want your format of data is an XML format, then you need support. And Java messaging service, this is a different system. And SQL is all about if you are connecting with the database directly, some external DB. If you want to connect, then in that scenario you need to create this connect SQL. So to write, so this will enable to write the SQL queries. Okay, we can write the SQL queries in the in this particular connect SQL, and we'll access the data from the external database directly. These are with applications. Okay. So this is with directly database. So now, if you want to access this application data, you can use either REST or SOAP based on the response that we are going to get. So this service system will maintain the languages, or it's not languages, but formats. So they might maintain XML format, the service which they built, or they might maintain in JSON format, the service which they built. Okay. So it varies. That depends on the developers and the technical whatever the challenges that they have. So based on that, so whichever is comfortable for them, so they are going to build that particular service in the pillow formats, either XML or JSON. So now if you want to, if this is in Pega application and this is a Java application, so Pega and Java, it is a bit difficult to communicate. I mean, in terms of technology, so both are of Java. The backend is Java, that's fine. But if it is a .NET or something, so Pega cannot communicate with .NET because both are different platforms. So in such situations, these are things which are commonly used. So XML or JSON is all about. So these are the common formats or common languages which are being used between the two systems or any of the systems. So these are global, like everybody will use these formats, are the standard formats for exchanging the data or for transferring of the data, XML format or JSON format. So if it is .NET, and not everybody uses .NET, right? So if it is Java, not everybody will use Java. If it is Python, not everybody will use Python. So only Python can communicate with Python, and Java with Java, .NET with .NET. So there, I mean, these platforms cannot communicate with other platforms normally, right? So here also in our scenario, so we have Pega application, and this is .NET and Java, let's say. So in order to have a common formatting of the data, so the standard languages or standard formats are XML or JSON. So the data transfer happens with these formats. So if we are using these formats, yes, we can communicate. Any system can communicate with this system because the other source system can understand this XML or JSON. Depending on the type of connector. So this connectors, as you can see here, REST can basically accept XML and JSON because it can understand both, whereas SOAP can understand only XML. So when the client system develops either this protocol or this protocol, it's fine. So these connectors can understand the JSON or XML because So this is the common formatting structure where it is being used by global IT. Okay. So this is how we have connectors here. So we can build any of the connector based on the type of service or response that they are giving. If they are giving JSON, then we can use REST. If they are giving XML, yes, we can use REST, and also we can use SOAP. For XML, we have both options of REST and SOAP. And for only JSON, you can use only REST connector. You have to develop a REST connector. And then that's from the client side. And when it comes to services also, so service side, even in Pega, let's say you want to develop a service and you want to provide a service, then you will call a service system. And the third party system is called as a client system. That means if different clients will access your system's data, then you are called a service. If you are accessing other systems data, then you are called a client. Okay, that is vice versa. When you are sharing your data, your system's data to other systems or other systems, different systems, then you are called a service. But when you are accessing other systems data, then you are called a client. So that is the difference. So even in services also, services we have service REST, service SOAP. We have different services. Okay, we cannot look at all those things. So we have different services we can build, and we can share the URL and all these. What is input? What are the input parameters? We need to share it to the different clients where they can actually access by passing that input parameters. So that request is going to come to our system, and we are going to give the response. So that might be in XML or JSON. So based on our requirement. So this is how client and service systems acts, and this is the whole part of integration. So this is a simple explanation of the integration part. So yeah, so you can see here. So we'll just show you a couple of rules where these are the integration connectors, what we have, what we discussed, and integration services. So when you are building a connector, that means when you are a client, then you are going to use these things: connect CMIS, connect file, connect REST, connect SOAP, connect SQL. So all these. So based on the external systems, you're going to choose it, but most of the times you'll choose REST or SOAP. Okay. If it is a DB, yes, you'll use SQL. And these are the client and connectors. And when it comes to services, so when service is all about when you are providing your service to others, that means you have some data here. So let's say I have a database table of citizens or some products list. Okay, I have some products list. So where the external systems or external clients wants to access my list of products. Okay, they want to fetch the data from my system, these list of products. So now I will be acting as a service. So I have to build a service REST or service SOAP or whatever, and I have to share all the endpoint URLs and input parameters and query string parameters, everything. So let's say they want to access this data. So for that, I need to create a service, either service REST or SOAP or whatever we need to create, and we need to expose the service. So that's how we are going to basically do when we are going to create the service. Okay, so now let's see what are the steps that normally follow to create an integration. So when it comes to connectors, so if you are building a connector or if you are a client and you want to access external system data. So what is the first step that you're going to do is you are going to create a wizard. Okay, so there is an integration wizard where you are going to run that. So we can either do both ways. So what is wizard is basically it will automate all the things. So normally what happens is when in the previous versions of Pega, like in the 7th versions and all, so we don't used to have a wizard for the integration part. So in that situation, what we need to do is we have to create properties by our own. Like we need to create properties manually. We need to create data pages manually. We need to create classes manually. We need to create XML rules like parse and stream. Parse XML. If it is an XML structure, we need to create these rules. And then we need to create connect list or connect soap based on your connect list or connect soap based on your connector. So these things we need to do it manually. So what are the properties? Properties are nothing but the data, the kind of information which we are getting. Let's say if I'm getting this data like first name of a person, last name of a person, age of a person, date of birth of a person, gender of a person, address of a person, and mail ID of a person. All these, there are, let's say, some 15 to 20 properties. So each and every first name is one property, last name is one property, age is one property. So these are the different properties where we are getting the response for every person. So we need to create all these properties as a part of integration. We are building a connector. So instead of all these, if you are creating all these, it is taking too much longer time. Let's say if you have properties, let's say you are getting some 200 or 300 properties in a response. Okay, like if you see first name, last name, etc., there are a lot of properties, like 200. So now we need to create 200 properties manually. So that is practically it is really bad to create that because you have to keep on creating the rules, manually. The same thing you need to do 200 times. So why to do this manually, which consumes a lot of time, a lot of development time goes here, right? So Pega, what they have done, so instead of creating all these rules and wasting the time, so they have simply given a wizard. Okay, this wizard will create all these rules at the back end. You need not to do anything. So based on the response, we need to give the simulation data. So based on the input, we need to just run a sample request and response test. Okay, in the wizard, when we give the endpoint URL and we need to define the parameters like query string or like Aadhaar number as an input parameter. Then once we run the wizard, so it will try to hit the service and it will try to fetch the response structure, what it is giving us. So once the response structure is received, so based on that response structure, Pega will capture all the response structure and it will create the properties based on the response. How many tags are there or how many elements are there? Based on that, Pega will capture and it will create the properties automatically. So it takes just minutes of time to create this wizard. But when we create manually, it may take 1 hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. It depends. There are more properties. Thus, you need to keep on creating. So that is the wizard part. And second one is the rules are created. So just create a wizard, it will create everything. And once the wizard is done, rules are created. And now once that is created, identify the relevant data page and run it or consume it in your. So once the wizard is done, it will create the data pages and everything. So the simple thing you need to do is you need to open the data page which Pega has created. You just run it and consume it in your wherever you want. Like if you want it in activities or data transforms or somewhere or sections or anywhere, just consume that particular data page, and it will hit the service and it will fetch the data and it will put it on the data page. So you can see request and response data transforms. If you want to update any of the properties, yes, you can do with that. So that's how the integration is done. Okay. This is about the connector side. That means if you are a client, yes, this is the process. Normally, if you are a service, means you want to provide your data to other external system. So let's say you have the data. This is your table. Okay, this is your application. Inside your application, you have products. You see product list. So this data you want to give it to all the other systems. Okay. So first thing what we need to do is you need to create a service package. And then once you create a service package, you need to create service REST or so based on your format, whatever you want. If you want either XML or JSON, anyone, you can use REST. If you want only XML, yes, you can use so. Okay, once you're done with the service REST, next you need to configure the service activity. So where your business logic should be here. So you need to write your business logic. When a request is, when we get the request, based on that, you need to write the logic to fetch the data and expose it to the client. And also you need to do the exceptional handling here, where when any invalid request or any invalid values were coming in the form of request, yes, you need to identify the invalid input and the return, and you need to return the error code or error response or whatever based on the input received. And also you need to add the validation if any of the input is in invalid format. You can do everything, all those things in the service activity. And the final thing is posing the service. That's it. So that means here these are the steps that you need to follow for creating this service. Okay. So these are the steps that we normally use for creating the service and connector. So exposing services are about sharing your endpoint URL, and parameters like query string or whatever other parameters we have. Yes, you need to share all this to a client or whatever the other systems we want to access. Okay. So here you can see the sample connector, connect REST, and connect SOAP. So this is service. Yeah. So let's see. This is a service. Okay. We have other system here. So this is another system where this is called the endpoint URL. So this is a service, not a connector. Okay. So we are providing our service. So this is our service endpoint URL where this is consumed by client. So we need to share this URL, and also we need to share the method what we are using here. We are using get method. So yeah, so these are the parameters. Here I have used header parameters. So my input parameter will be Aadhaar number. So the client should share the Aadhaar number as an input, and he might get the response as a here. He will get the response. Okay, so you can choose the formats here based on the problem value. And this is a service activity where you need to write the business logic here to access the data based on the inputs, and you need to do the exception handling here also. So this is about the service REST, and when we go with the connector, so connect REST is, so let's say this is one of the connect REST. So here I have given the path as this service, some service URL, endpoint URL. So this will be defined by the service, okay, service people, not by us. Okay. And for the method, so here the input we are sending is the Aadhaar number, okay, and the response we are going to get here onto this, okay. So here what it is, I have taken both connector and service from the Pega itself because I don't have external system. So I have taken it from the relevant Pega as a service and Pega as a connector for a client. So guys, this is all about the integration part. So I hope you got at least a minimum knowledge through this session. So this is why we use integration, and these are the mechanisms what we have in Pega to perform the integration part. And this is the importance of the purpose of integration. So I hope I'm clear with the session, and yes, if you do have any questions, yes, you can post in the comments. If I have a time, yes, I will respond back and revert based on my availability. Yeah, that's it for today, and thanks for your time. Thank you. Bye, bye, bye.